This is the weekly roundup on the EAC News Channel. A very good evening to you. I'm Yuri Matosco. Now for a look at how the weather is going to be playing out for the next few days. Prime Minister Hun Sen has presided over the inauguration of the first section of National Road No. 5 this Monday morning. The first section of the road inaugurated today stretches for nearly 85 kilometers and connects Battambang province to Serei Sopon city in Banteay Meanchey province. The ambassador of Japan to Cambodia, Mikami Masahiro, also attended the inauguration ceremony, which was held in Battambang. Senior Minister Sun Chantol said the new road from Battambang to Serei Sopon is the first of 3 sections of the National Road No. 5 project, with a total budget of $500 million as an ODA loan from the government of Japan. According to the senior minister, the 3 sections of the road include the first one by the north from Battambang to Serei Sopon, delivered this Monday. The second section is in the south from Preg Kadam to Tilia Ma'am with a length of 135 kilometers, about 65% completed and is scheduled to be delivered by mid-2022. The third section, located in the middle of the road from Tilia Ma'am to Battambang and Serei Sopon Poipet, has a length of 146 km at the moment, with 55% of its construction completed. The National Road No. 5 is a concrete road with a thickness of 15 centimeters and a width of 23 meters, reaching 4 lanes. The first section of a road includes the construction of 2 roads between cities, 24 kilometers of roads in Battambang city and 9 kilometers in Serei Sopon. It also includes the construction of 2 new bridges, as well as expansion and repair of 10 existing bridges. The project includes the installation of 76 box drains and 113 round drains, as well as LED lighting at intersections. The announcement ceremony for the start of the construction site, under the High Presidency of Samdech Techo Prime Minister, was on 26 of March 2018. The first phase of the road took 55 months to be completed, finishing in September 2021 with a total budget of $165 million. Speaking on the occasion, Prime Minister Hun Sen expressed his congratulations to the new infrastructure achievements linking the 2 northern provinces, the former battlefields. The National Road No. 5 is a strategic road linking Phnom Penh capital to the border with Thailand, crossing the provinces of Kandal, Kampong Chhnang, Pursat, Battambang, and Banteay Meanchey. The road is part of the ASEAN Highway 1 (AH1) connecting Phnom Penh, Bangkok, and Ho Chi Minh City. According to the Prime Minister, such road acts as a strategic economic corridor of ASEAN and the Greater Mekong sub-region, bringing more trade, commerce, and tourism to the kingdom. Prime Minister Hun Sen has instructed the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports to consider the current situation in the country, including the development capacity of officials at both the national and subnational levels and the level of accountability, management, and implementation of a decentralized and disconcentrated education sector in order to build a stronger education system in Cambodia. He made these remarks during his speech to mark the opening of the 2021-2022 school year on Monday morning. Prime Minister Hun Sen said that the opening of the school year today comes after many months of struggle with COVID-19 by the royal government and the people of Cambodia. The Prime Minister stated that the decision to reopen schools was made to build strength and in order to return to a stronger sense of normalcy. Thus, he urged the Ministry of Education to consider the options and develop a wide range of teaching and learning resources to ensure a responsive and vibrant educational service, especially focusing on making the teaching and learning process flexible and educational services decentralized. In particular, he stated that the education system must respond to the labor market by applying new approaches and skills needed in the digital age. In this regard, the Prime Minister stated that he also instructed the ministry to consider digital education and distance learning options more, while ensuring that all educational institutions improve their health and hygiene provisions in the context of COVID-19, and also continuing to raise awareness among students on the measures necessary to respond to and participate in preventing the spread of COVID-19 in educational institutions. He continued that educational institutions at all levels must prepare safe environments, regularly clean the schools, provide clean water, toilets, and washrooms, and aim towards improving the green spaces with more park-like spaces for students to enjoy. All such measures, the Prime Minister said, are in order to make schools a more suitable place for education and training for the development of clean minds, good attitudes, and reduction of mental or physical harassments. The royal government of Cambodia announced the closure of all schools on March 2020 in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19 among students, ushering in the quick turn to digital and online education. However, due to the success of the national vaccination campaign, Cambodia fully reopened on the 1st of November and officially closed the 20 February event on 20 December, meaning that all schools were able to reopen in the new year. Prime Minister Hun Sen sent a congratulatory message to Japan for its 30th anniversary of UN peacekeeping operation in Cambodia since the early 1990s. During the inauguration ceremony of the first phase of the new section of National Road No. 5 connecting Battambang to Serei Sopon, Prime Minister Hun Sen expressed his profound thanks to Japan for its contribution to the peace negotiation process in the 1980s and the first Japan peacekeeping operation in Cambodia in the 1990s. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more.
Prime Minister Hun Sen took the opportunity to thank the government and people of Japan for their friendship and contribution to Cambodian development while delivering a speech at the inauguration ceremony of the new section of National Road No. 5. He stated that 2022 is the 30th anniversary of Japan's peacekeeping operations in Cambodia, so he would be looking into organizing some special activities to commemorate this historical event. He extended his condolences for the 2 Japanese nationals that lost their lives in Cambodia during the UN peacekeeping operations, and also mentioned that Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force ship will be docking in Cambodia. Together with peacekeepers from other countries, 8 Japanese personnel were dispatched from September 1992 to March 1993 as officials from the Japan Self-Defense Forces to UNTAC as ceasefire observers. They were responsible for monitoring the ceasefire and supervising encampments, storing weapons collected from disarmed Cambodian soldiers of all factions. The Japanese officials monitored the ceasefire at checkpoints along the border to detect any infiltration of other forces or smuggling of weapons and ammunition. Darshana Gochan, EAC News.
The Cambodian Mine Action and Victim Assistance Authorities, CMAA, has reported that 3 demining staff of the Cambodian Self-Helping Demining Organization and 1 villager were killed in 2 separate mine explosions in Santechia village in Preah province on Monday morning. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more details.
According to a notice posted on the official Facebook page of CMAA, it was confirmed that a mine explosion had occurred around 11:30 a.m. on Monday in Santechia village in Preah province. The explosion left 3 explosive ordnance disposal staff from Cambodian Self-Help Demining dead and another seriously injured and currently being treated at the division hospital. This incident came just 2 days after the demining organization received a request from residents of the village to find a total of 12 rounds of 82mm non-lethal ammunition on their farm area. In addition, another separate mine explosion took place on the same day around 11 a.m. at a potato field, killing another resident of Santechia village. The Director General of the Cambodian Mine Action Center, Heng Ratana, wrote on his Facebook page saying that these 2 unconnected explosions coincidentally occurred around the same time and in the same village. He said it was a coincidence that before the deminer's death, only about 20 minutes before in this village, there was also a bomb blast that killed a villager. Director General Heng Ratana further confirmed to EAC News that in the past there had been incidents of demining officers working for a number of organizations, including CMAC, who died while clearing unexploded mines, but he said that in recent years Cambodia has seen less of such incidents. Among the provinces bordering Cambodia and Thailand, Preah Vihear is the one with the highest number of unexploded ordnances still left. The CMAC Director General added that he would like to take this opportunity to call on everyone to be careful, especially when finding landmines or unexploded ordnances. He urged everyone to report to the local authorities, police forces, or deminers nearby so that the explosives can be cleared immediately to avoid potential injuries and deaths. According to a statement made by the first vice president of the CMAA, Lee Tuik, in September 2021, the current area of minefields in Cambodia is about 800 square kilometers. He stated that due to the achievements of the implementation of a mine action plan between 2018 and 2020, Cambodia was able to liberate 421 square kilometers of land from landmines and unexploded ordnances, equivalent to 66% of the 3-year plan. During this period, 49,256 anti-personnel mines, 956 anti-tank mines, and 221,372 explosive remnants of war were found, and about 2 million people were affected. Darshana Gochan, EAC News.
The royal government of Cambodia issued a 4-point mechanism in response to new community-transmitted cases of the Omicron variant on Tuesday. So far, Cambodia has reported 14 community-transmitted cases of the new variant. Under the mechanism promoting COVID-19 vaccination and in strengthening the implementation of health safety measures to combat and prevent the spread of COVID-19, especially the new Omicron variant, which was introduced to the National Vaccine Program, capital provincial governors, other relevant mechanisms, and the general population are instructed to accelerate the rate of COVID-19 vaccinations both locally and regionally. The mechanism is also intended to continue monitoring the daily implementation of COVID-19 vaccinations, especially to coordinate vaccination teams according to the situation in each locality, and to ensure timely supply and adequate supply of vaccines both in the capital and in the provinces. In addition, the mechanism also points to placing more attention on activities related to educating people more widely about the need for COVID-19 vaccines to encourage everyone to get fully vaccinated as soon as possible. The mechanism also stresses the necessity of taking measures to further strengthen and promote the implementation of the 3 does and 3 don'ts policy, as well as other established health safety measures. On Monday night, Prime Minister Hun Sen released an 8-minute voice message where he announced that Cambodia had found 34 more cases of Omicron infection, 10 of which were community transmission cases. He said that the necessary measures now are to prevent and accelerate the speed of vaccination to ensure that the community is strong.
គណៈកម្មការចំពោះកិច្ចសម្រាប់ការចាក់វ៉ាក់សាំងបានចែកជូនវ៉ាក់សាំង AstraZeneca ក៏ដូចជា Moderna បញ្ជូនទៅតាមបណ្ដាខេត្តរួចទៅហើយវ៉ាក់សាំងប្រភេទណាក៏ដោយតម្រូវការបញ្ហាសំខាន់គឺគូប្រេតត្រូវមានគ្រប់គ្រាន់ដើម្បីចាក់បន្ថែមលើនោះអ្វីដែលសំខាន់ជាងទៀតអាជ្ញាធរគ្រប់លំដាប់ថ្នាក់ត្រូវតែពង្រឹងនិងយកចិត្តទុកដាក់ទៅលើការប្រមូលមនុស្សមកចាក់ឲ្យបានគ្រប់គ្នានៅដុសជំរុញដើម្បីជាវិធានការទប់ស្កាត់ជាមួយនឹងមេរោគបំផ្លែងថ្មីនេះ
However, the Prime Minister also added that the conditions for receiving the 3rd dose must be in accordance with the specified health standards, which is 4 months after receiving the 2nd dose. If 4 months have not yet passed since receiving the 2nd dose, then health authorities and doctors will not be able to authorize the booster vaccination because it does not guarantee safety. Cambodia currently has reported a total of 14 community-transmitted cases of the Omicron variant. Cambodia currently has reported a total of 14 community-transmitted cases of the Omicron variant. Cambodia has also achieved almost 90% vaccination among the 16 million population aged 5 and over, with about 4 million people having also received their booster shots. A spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Khoi Kun, said on Wednesday that the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting that was scheduled to be held on 18 and 19 January 2022 in Siem Reap province has been postponed. The spokesman stated that the reason for the meeting's postponement was due to many ASEAN foreign ministers saying that they would have difficulty traveling to attend, but he added that this postponement would not affect the work of Foreign Minister and ASEAN Special Envoy to Myanmar, Prak Sokhonn. Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman Khoi Kun stated to EAC News that the decision to postpone the AMM retreat was because many ASEAN foreign ministers stated they would have difficulty traveling to Siem Reap to attend the meeting in January. At a press conference held last Saturday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Deputy Prime Minister Prak Sokhonn, stated that his candidacy for the Special Envoy of the ASEAN Chair on Myanmar would be announced in a closed meeting to be held in Siem Reap on 18 and 19 January. Spokesman Khoi Kun confirmed that this meeting's postponement would not affect the position and role of the ASEAN Special Envoy, as all ASEAN parties had already agreed with this decision after Prime Minister Hun Sen announced Deputy Prime Minister Prak Sokhonn as a Special Envoy earlier this year. The spokesman, however, was not able to confirm when the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting will be rescheduled to. The ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, also known as the AMM retreat, was established in 1967 to be in charge of discussions regarding ASEAN political security cooperation, as well as ASEAN's relations with external parties and within ASEAN. The AMM is held at least 4 times a year and may also convene for special occasions when it is necessary to discuss issues that need urgent attention from ASEAN. The AMM regularly review and discuss efforts to build the ASEAN community, its strategic future direction, and the conduct of ASEAN external relations. Prime Minister Hun Sen and the Ambassador of Japan to Cambodia, Mikami Masahiro, signed an exchange of letters and related documents on the provision of concessional loans nearing at a total of $200 million for the second phase of the COVID-19 Crisis Response Emergency Support Loan project between Japan and Cambodia. EAC News reporter Chamunamrete said has more details.
The provisions of concessional loans with an approximately total of $185 million or 20 billion yen was signed off by Japanese Ambassador Mikami Masahiro and the Prime Minister Hun Sen at the Peace Palace on Wednesday morning. Japan's lending to Cambodia is now in its second phase, with the first phase providing more than $227 million in loans in 2020 to support the implementation of the royal government policy and respond to the health, social, and economic impacts of COVID-19, especially on the social aid for the poor and vulnerable. According to the Ministry of Economic and Finance, the royal government of Cambodia has not yet used that loan. In addition, the government of Japan has also provided ambulance, vaccine cabinets, medical equipment, and 1.3 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine to Cambodia. Since the outbreaks of the COVID-19 pandemic began, the royal government has issued a number of mechanisms responding to the crisis with a total budget around $2.3 billion. The release of the national budget is intended to support the lives of people affected by COVID-19, pay wages to the workers in government and textile sectors, as well as workers in the tourism sector, and to buy vaccines to inject people. On 27 January 2020, Cambodia reported the focus of the COVID-19 virus in a man from Wuhan, China. After the presence of COVID-19 was detected in Cambodia, the royal government began announcing the closures of a number of sectors. The 20 February community event in 2021 was the longest-running large-scale transmission event in the kingdom. After a successful vaccination campaign, Prime Minister Hun Sen announced the full reopenings of the country on 1st November 2021, then declared the ends of the 20 February events on 20 December. The Prime Minister, however, still continued to urge vigilance in the fight against COVID-19, including the need of swift vaccination. Prior to the pandemic, Cambodia had an average economic growth rate around 7%, which declined by 3.1% in 2020. They saw an increase of 2.4% by 2021. The Asian Development Bank forecasts that Cambodia's economic will grow by 5.5% in 2022. Jamrong Retiset, EAC News.
U.S. Embassy spokesman Chad Rodemeyer told EAC News that the embassy was closely following Prime Minister Hun Sen's visit to Myanmar on 7 of January. Although he did not say whether he supported or opposed the visit, the spokesman said the United States urges Cambodia to use its ASEAN chairmanship to ensure the implementation of ASEAN's 5-point consensus principle for Myanmar and to ensure the ASEAN Special Envoy will meet with all the relevant stakeholders in Myanmar. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more.
Spokesman Chad Rodemeyer wrote to EAC News in an email saying, "We support the ASEAN 5-point consensus and urge Cambodia as the 2022 ASEAN chair to continue to press for implementation of the 5 points and to ensure that any visit by the ASEAN Special Envoy includes meeting with all parties concerned. We reiterate our call for the Burmese military regime to end the use of violence, releasing all those unjustly detained, and engage in constructive dialogue with all parties that respects the will of the people of Burma. ASEAN's 5-point consensus on Myanmar calls for an end to the violence, the establishment of a multilateral dialogue, the coordination of ASEAN special envoys, the provision of humanitarian assistance, and the granting of special envoys to visit Myanmar." The spokesman of the Royal Government of Cambodia, Phai Siphan, said that the statement of the U.S. Embassy in Cambodia is slower than the Prime Minister's actions, as Prime Minister Hun Sen has achieved results beyond the 5-point consensus of ASEAN. He added that Prime Minister's solution to Myanmar was to promote the implementation of this consensus.
The United States does not seem to understand and have misunderstood that the Prime Minister did everything alone. In the language of cowboy diplomacy that was used in conjunction with the Prime Minister's actions. Because the Prime Minister did not just implement his consensus, but he did what was sustainable.
On Monday, at the inauguration ceremony of National Road No. 5, connecting Battambang to Seray Sophon City in Banteay Minche, Prime Minister Hun Sen instructed ASEAN to establish 2 mechanisms, including a mechanism to ensure the end to the violence and to provide humanitarian aid to Myanmar in order to pave the way for negotiations and the 2023 elections in Myanmar. The Prime Minister suggested that the ceasefire mechanism discussions should include the past, current, and future ASEAN chairmanship and the ASEAN Secretary General to coordinate the ceasefire in Myanmar and maintain security and welcome the ASEAN Special Envoy to hold dialogues between all parties before the 2023 Myanmar elections. Prime Minister Hun Sen visited Myanmar on 7th to 8th January to help find a solution to the conflict and bring the country back to ASEAN. Following the visit, China has expressed its full support, saying that Cambodia has played an active role and contributed significantly to the management of differences between the 2 political sides in Myanmar through the holding of political dialogue and the development of stabilization and settlement at an early stage. Darshana Gauchan, EAC News.
Prime Minister Hun Sen told the Director General of the Universal Peace Federation, Yoon Young-ho, that the promotion and maintenance of peace in the ASEAN Pacific region must have 3 principles: to have the goal of supporting peace and development, to not be against any group or country, and to support the ASEAN concept for the Asia Pacific. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more.
Minister delegate attached to the Prime Minister, Cao Kum-huan, told reporters after the meeting between Prime Minister Hun Sen and Director General Yoon Young-ho that the meeting was organized to gather and receive advice from the Prime Minister for the organization of the Universal Peace Foundation's 2022 Summit on Peace in the Korean Peninsula, which the Prime Minister will personally attend on 12th and 13th February. During the meeting, Director General Yoon Young-ho expressed his support for the work of Prime Minister Hun Sen, who traveled to Myanmar on 7th January and successfully achieved a ceasefire extension until the end of 2022. He also stated his support to the ASEAN Special Envoy to Myanmar for assisting the negotiations as well. He described the Prime Minister's work as chair of ASEAN at the beginning of the year as a fruitful achievement in maintaining peace in Myanmar and the region as a whole. Previously, on 12 September 2021, the 7th World Rally for Hope Think Tank 2022, organized by the Universal Peace Federation, a network of international organizations, celebrities, and religious people, presented the World Summit Peace Gold Medal to Prime Minister Hun Sen for playing a key role in helping keep the Korean Peninsula and the world at peace. The Prime Minister will also be attending the UPF Summit on Peace in the Korean Peninsula next month, with former UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon as co-chair and the attendance of other leaders and dignitaries from 157 countries. More than 200,000 people are also expected to attend the summit virtually, and about 3,500 media outlets will be covering the meeting. Darshana Gauchen, EAC News.
The Secretary of State of the Ministry of Social Affairs and the Secretary General of the Disability Action Council, M. Chan Makara, has called for there to be more sign language interpreters to meet current and future needs, as Cambodia will hold a series of major events from 2022. He made this statement while distributing gifts to teachers and students at Phnom Penh Thmai and Chibat Ampov Special Education High Schools on behalf of the Minister of Social Affairs, Vong Sot, on Wednesday morning. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchen has more details.
Secretary of State M. Chan Makara distributed gifts on behalf of the Minister of Social Affairs, Vong Sot, for the occasion of the 23rd National and 39th International Day of Persons with Disabilities at the Ministry of Social Affairs. Speaking at this event, the Secretary of State called for more training of sign language interpreters to prepare for the big meetings and events Cambodia will begin to host starting in 2022. He said that in Cambodia there are less than 20 sign language interpreters, meaning that there is a shortage for when Cambodia will host important meetings such as the ASEM and ASEAN summits. He added that some of these meetings last for 3 days straight, and having only 1 or 2 sign language interpreters will not be able to suffice, especially since this year Cambodia is the ASEAN chair. The Secretary of State thus urged lower-level officials to start working with the Ministry of Education to increase sign language interpreters in preparation for future events. He said that the sign language course should take at least 10 months of training to be applicable. Previously, Prime Minister Hun Sen had also called on TV stations to include sign language interpreters in their programs, but the problem is that there is a serious lack of sign language interpreters, and increasing the number requires proper training courses to be available. Darshana Gauchen, EAC News.
The Chinese embassy in Cambodia announced the completion of the inspection and quality check procedures for Cambodia's longan fruit for export to China, which yielded positive results in line with expectations that Cambodia would be able to export longan to the Chinese market. EAC News reporter Siri Po Kong has more.
The Chinese embassy in Cambodia confirmed on Monday that the Chinese Customs Administration conducted a risk analysis and inspection of longan fruits between January 4 to 6 with Cambodian officials over online video call, with officials from the Chinese embassy in Cambodia and the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fishery of Cambodia present at the plantation sites. The Chinese and Cambodian officials inspected fruit plantation in Pailan and Battambang provinces, inspected 2 package factories in Pailan and Kampong Spu province, and also inspected the Ministry of Agriculture, Phytosanitary and Quality Laboratories and Safety Laboratories. The Chinese embassy in Cambodia confirmed that the officials from China and Cambodia have said that the assessment was completely successful and achieved the expected results. Previously, Chinese ambassador to Cambodia Wang Ventien affirmed at the inauguration ceremony of National Road Number 11 on 6 December 2021 that China had decided to conduct a study and quality check analysis of Cambodian longan fruit and pangasius fish through online video conference. He said that this was an important initial measure in response to Prime Minister Hun Sen's request to the Chinese government to help open the Chinese market for Cambodian longan fruit, made during a meeting with State Councillor and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi on 12 September 2021. According to the General Department of Agriculture, there are about 8,000 hectares of longan plantation in the province of Pailan, Banteay Meanchey, Badambong, and Posat. Sray Pokung, EAC News.
On Friday morning, Prime Minister Hun Sen posted a message on his official Facebook page saying that he and his wife had received the 4th dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. He stated that the only person who can protect him from the virus is himself, so he urges everyone to get vaccinated so they can do their part to protect themselves and their community as well. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more.
In the message he posted on Facebook, the Prime Minister stated that he has a strong defense force, but they cannot prevent him from catching COVID-19, and neither can his family protect him from the virus. He reiterated that only he can protect himself from the virus by getting vaccinated, then urged all citizens to receive the vaccine and booster shots to do their part in protecting themselves, their families, communities, and the nation as a whole. During the inauguration ceremony of the new section of National Road Number 5 on Monday morning, Prime Minister Hun Sen announced that he would receive the 4th dose vaccine to bolster his immune system against COVID-19 before leaving for the United Arab Emirates on 23 January. He said that he and his wife had taken antibody tests before he departed to Myanmar and found that he still had antibodies left, but would need to strengthen his immune system with the 4th dose Pfizer vaccine to ensure greater protection from the COVID-19 virus. Previously, on 14 September 2021, Prime Minister Hun Sen and his wife Bunrani Hun Sen received the 3rd dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Since then, 4 months have passed, which is the recommended gap between the 3rd and 4th booster doses, and according to the Ministry of Health, who say that every dose of the vaccine should be taken with a gap of 4 to 6 months. Darshana Gauchan, EAC News.
A new strain of the COVID-19 virus, a combined mutation of the Delta and Omicron variants, was found in Cyprus, according to Leondios Kostrikis, professor of biological sciences at the University of Cyprus and the head of the Laboratory of Biotechnology and Molecular Virology.
The newly discovered mutant virus strain was named Deltacron due to the identification of Omicron-like genetic signatures within the Delta genomes. Professor Kostrikis said in an interview, "There are currently Omicron and Delta co-infections, and we found this strain that is a combination of these two." Professor Kostrikis and his team have identified 25 such cases, and statistical analysis shows that the relative frequency of the combined infection is higher among patients hospitalized due to COVID-19 as compared to non-hospitalized patients. The sequence of the 25 Deltacron cases were sent to GIS-AID, the international database that tracks changes in the virus, on Friday, January 7th. The professor added, "We will see in the future if this strain is more pathological or more contagious, or if it will prevail over Delta and Omicron. But his personal view is that this strain will also be displaced by the highly contagious Omicron variant."
A court in military-ruled Myanmar has sentenced ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 4 years in jail on several charges, including the possession of unlicensed walkie-talkies. On Monday, according to a source familiar with the proceedings.
Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, 76, is on trial for nearly a dozen cases that carry a combined sentence of more than 100 years in prison. She denies all charges. Suu Kyi's supporters say the cases against her are baseless, designed to end her political career and tie her up in legal proceedings while the military consolidates power. Myanmar has been in turmoil since the February 1 coup against Suu Kyi's democratically elected government, which led to widespread protests and raised international concerns about the end of tentative political reforms following decades of military rule. The court was originally set to announce Suu Kyi's sentencing on December 27 on charges of possession of unlicensed walkie-talkies and a set of signal jammers, which carry maximum penalties of 3 years and a year in jail, respectively. The source, who spoke on condition of anonymity, has mentioned that the judge did not give a reason for the deferral. The latest sentencing comes after Suu Kyi was sentenced on December 6 to 4 years in jail for incitement and breaching of coronavirus rules by the court. Her sentence was later reduced to a 2-year of detention in her current undisclosed location.
Say that we understand our country better than any other country does.
A number of strategic facilities in Kazakhstan are under the guard of a Russia-led military alliance invited to restore order, the presidential office has announced on Sunday, amid the deadliest outbreak of violence in the country's 30 years of independence.
Dozens of people have been killed, thousands detained, and public buildings have been torched across the Central Asian country in the past week, prompting President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev to issue shoot-to-kill orders to end the violence, which he blames on what he terms bandits and terrorists. At the invitation of the President of Kazakhstan, the Russia-led Collective Security Treaty Organization sent troops to restore order, an intervention that comes at a time of high tension in Russia-US relations ahead of new talks on the Ukraine crisis. The presidential office has said in a statement detailing a security briefing chaired by the president himself that a number of strategic facilities have been transferred under the protection of the United Peacekeeping Contingent of the CSTO member states, though it did not identify the facilities. The administration said 5,800 people had been arrested in connection with the unrest, including a significant number of foreign citizens. It has also said the situation had stabilized in all regions. The demonstrations in Kazakhstan began as a response to a fuel price hike before spiraling into a broad movement against President Tokayev's government and Nursultan Nazarbayev, the man he replaced as president of the resource-rich former Soviet Republic. Nazarbayev, who is 81, was the longest-serving ruler of any former Soviet state until his rule was turned over to Tokayev in 2019. His family is widely believed to have retained influence in Nur-Sultan, the purpose-built capital that bears his name. On Wednesday, President Tokayev removed Nazarbayev as head of the country's Security Council, a role which he had continued to wield significant influence over. Kazakhstan's former intelligence chief and two-time prime minister Karim Masimov has been arrested on suspicion of treason.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said Washington was seeking clarifications from Kazakhstan officials on why they needed to call in Russian-led security forces to resolve domestic unrest, and he further denounced the Kazakhstan government's shoot-to-kill order.
Secretary Blinken was quoted saying during an interview on Sunday that the shoot-to-kill order, to the extent it exists, is wrong and should be rescinded.
We've made clear that we expect the Kazakh government to deal with protesters in ways that respects their rights, that pulls back from violence at the same time. It, of course, has a right to defend.
The orders now are shoot-to-kill.
That is something I resolutely reject. The shoot-to-kill order, to the extent it exists, is wrong and should be rescinded. And Kazakhstan has the ability to maintain law and order, to defend the institutions of the state, but to do so in a way that respects the rights of peaceful protesters and also addresses the concerns that they've raised, economic concerns, some political concerns. We have real questions about why it was necessary to call in this organization that Russia leads and is a part of.
Meanwhile, Kazakhstan authorities have detained Karim Masimov, the former head of the National Security Committee, and some other officials on suspicion of treason, the Security Committee said on Saturday without providing further details. Security forces appeared to have reclaimed the streets of Kazakhstan's main city on Friday after days of violence. The Russian-backed President Tokayev has declared he had issued the shoot-to-kill order to take down a countrywide uprising.
A collection of 28 Cambodian cultural artifacts will be returned to Cambodia from a private collector in the United States. The repatriation of these invaluable artifacts comes through the cooperative efforts of the Royal Government of Cambodia and the U.S. government, as well as the cooperation of the private collector state. EAC News reporter Chamron said has the story.
A press release issued by the Ministry of Cultures and Fine Arts said that the United States Attorney Office for the Southern District of New York and Homeland Security Investigation filed a civic forfeitures action for 28 Cambodian cultural artifacts and seized the sculptures from the late private collector Douglas Ledford. Among the artifacts is a large sculpture of Ganesh that is believed to have been taken from Koke Temple, where witnesses report this state was removed from about 2 decades ago. This particular statue was listed by the Antiquities Coalition in 2020 as one of the top 10 most wanted looted statues in the world. The Ministers of Cultures and Fine Arts, Phung Sakona, has stated that this sculpture of Ganesh is another astonishing example of the brilliance of our ancestor. Ganesh, the Hindu god with an elephant head, is widely known for its wisdom and power to overcome obstacles, and its return home will be a momentous occasion for Cambodia. She stated that another artifacts to be returned including a sandstone Buddha sculpture from 7th to 8th century, a 10th century Hindu god Vishnu, and a 10th century bronze image of the Hindu goddess Lakshmi, and added that this current patriotism effort show Cambodia continued commitment to finding and bringing back the soul of ancestors who had been taken from the motherland, including during the period of war in the country. She continued that the ministry was thrilled that the private collectors agreed to cooperate with U.S. authorities and returns a large collection of statues, and further stated that the ministry encourages other collectors and museums to follow these examples and contact them to discuss repatriation of these stolen artifacts to their full right owner. The minister expressed her gratitude to Prime Minister Hun Sen for his leadership and win-win policy which allowed for the restoration of peace in Cambodia and made it possible for the soul of khmer ancestors who depart from their motherland during the war and conflict to finally return. She also thanked the U.S. Attorney Office, Homeland Security Investigation, and all relevant authorities involved both abroad and in Cambodia, including the U.S. Embassy in Cambodia and the Ministry of Culture's own team of archaeologists and researchers, for their all effort in the returns of these artifacts. She particularly extended a special thanks to Bradley J. Gardens of Edenbridge, Asia, and Stephen Hamburg of Hamburg Bar LLP, who have both spent many years working with the Ministry of Culture to help negotiate and facilitate the returns of stolen Cambodian cultural artifacts. Chambrong Rajiset, EAC News.
The World Health Organization's top Europe officials has announced on Tuesday that more than half of the European population are expected to be infected with the COVID-19 Omicron variant within the next 6 to 8 weeks.
World Health Organization's Regional Director for Europe, Hans Kluge, has announced that a new west-to-east tidal wave of Omicron infections is sweeping across the region on top of Delta infections. He stated during a news briefing that Europe saw more than 7 million newly reported COVID-19 cases in the first week of 2022, more than doubling over a 2-week period. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation forecasts that more than 50% of the population in the region will be infected with Omicron in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
50 of the 53 countries in Europe and Central Asia have now reported cases of Omicron. It is quickly becoming the dominant virus in Western Europe and is now spreading into the Balkans. At this rate, the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation forecasts that more than 50% of the population in the region will be infected with Omicron in the next 6 to 8 weeks. The Omicron variant represents a new west to east tidal wave sweeping across the region on top of the Delta surge that all countries were managing until late 2021. How each country now responds must be informed by its epidemiological situation, available resources, vaccination uptake status, and socio-economic context. The region saw over 7 million newly reported cases of COVID-19 in the first week of 2022, more than doubling over a 2-week period. Data collated in recent weeks confirms that Omicron is highly transmissible because the mutations it has enabled it to adhere to human cells more easily. And it can infect even those who have been previously infected or vaccinated. Allow me to reiterate that the currently approved vaccines do continue to provide good protection against severe disease and death, including for Omicron. But because of the unprecedented scale of transmission, we are now seeing rising COVID-19 hospitalizations. It is challenging health systems and service delivery in many countries where Omicron has spread at speed and threatens to overwhelm in many more.
The World Health classifies the overall risk of Omicron to be very high, noting in a recent technical report that it has a significant growth advantage over Delta, leading to rapid spread in the community. The organization has said that the rapid increase in cases will lead to an increase in hospitalizations, may pose overwhelming demands on healthcare systems, and also lead to significant morbidity, particularly in vulnerable populations. Another World Health Organization official, Catherine Smallwood, warned that COVID-19 is still a way off from becoming an endemic. She defined an endemic as the stable circulation of the virus at predictable levels and potentially known and predictable waves of epidemic transmission. She further added that what we're seeing at the moment coming into 2022 is nowhere near that. And we still have a huge amount of uncertainty. We still have a virus that's evolving quite quickly and posing new challenges. So we're certainly not at the point of being able to call it an endemic.
Now for a look at news making international headlines this Monday, 10th of January.
10 people died in the dramatic collapse of a canyon rock face on Fornas Lake on top of leisure motorboats visiting a waterfall in southeastern Brazil, rescuers said on Sunday. Another 32 were injured in the accident in the southeast of the country. A tower of rocks suddenly broke away from the canyon wall on Saturday and came crashing down, crushing one of the leisure boats at Capitolio in Minas Gerais state. 3 vessels were hit by falling rock, Lieutenant Pedro Ihara has confirmed. Out of the 32 injured, 9 people were in hospital. 20 people were initially reported missing, but Lieutenant Ihara said most were accounted for after checking hospital lists. Firemen and divers have recovered 3 more bodies from the lake on Sunday, bring the death toll to 10 in the disaster that injured dozens of tourists hit by falling rocks and a huge wave of water caused when the column of rocks crashed into the lake. The bodies were taken to Paso City, where coroners worked to identify them. The work was difficult because of the high energy impact of the rock on the boaters, said the regional civil police official, Marcos Pimenta. He has said one victim had been identified as 68-year-old Julio Borges Antones. Fornas Lake, which was created in 1958 for the installation of hydroelectric plant, is a popular tourist attraction in the area, roughly 420 kilometers north of São Paulo. Officials in Capitolio, which has about 8,400 residents, say the town can see approximately 5,000 visitors on a weekend and up to 30,000 on holidays. The region has been under heavy rainfall for 2 weeks, which could have loosened the rock face. On Saturday, a dike overflowed at an iron ore mine 300 kilometers to the east, cutting off a major federal highway.
19 people were killed, including 9 children, and dozens were injured when a fire, started by a malfunctioning space heater, spread smoke through a 19th-floor building in the Bronx borough of New York City on Sunday, 9 January. A witness to a massive fire in the Bronx has watched the tragedy unfold from her window, witnessing a billowing fire, a baby rescue and a man on a stretcher fighting for his life. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, just over a week into the job, has confirmed 19 people have died from the blaze that broke out around 11 a.m. in the imposing brown brick building, which provided affordable housing units. Earlier on Sunday, officials have said 32 people had been hospitalized with life-threatening injuries. New York City's mayor was quoted as saying, "It's a tragedy beyond measure." The fire itself started in an apartment that spanned the second and third floors of the building and only made it to the hall. Firefighters found victims on every floor in stairwells and were taking them out in a cardiac and respiratory arrest. The catastrophe was likely to stir questions on safety standards in low-income city housing. This was the second major deadly fire in a residential complex in the U.S. this week after 12 people, including 8 children, were killed early on Wednesday when flames swept through a public housing apartment buildings in Philadelphia. Some 200 firefighters helped put out the blaze, and some ran out of oxygen in their tanks but pushed through anyway to rescue people from the building.
Burnt-out vehicles and buildings were a testament to days of violence in Almaty on Sunday, as Kazakhstan's authorities have claimed that the situation was stabilizing after the worst political unrest in 30 years of independence. Thousands had been detained in public buildings torched during mass anti-government protests over the past week. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has issued shoot-to-kill orders to end unrest he has blamed on bandits and terrorists. Russians in state media have reported 164 people were killed during the clashes, citing a government social media post. But health and police authorities did not confirm the figure, and the social media post was then deleted. The internet has been restricted and telecoms patchy, making it difficult to check figures and confirm statements. No single group has emerged to speak for the protesters. At Tokayev's invitation, a Russia-led alliance of ex-Soviet states, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, has sent troops to restore order, an intervention that comes at a time at high tension in Russia-US relations ahead of talks this Monday on the Ukraine crisis. What began a week ago with demonstrations against a fuel price rise have exploded into a wider protests against Tokayev's government and the man he replaced as president, Nursultan Nazarbayev.
Russia has said on Tuesday that there is no reason to be optimistic after the first round of talks with the United States on the Ukrainian crisis and the demands for security guarantees from the West. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said that the talks were positive, however, added that Monday's talks in Geneva had been held in an open, substantive and directed manner. He has also mentioned that Russia was not setting deadlines but would not be satisfied with an endless dragging out of this process. Russia has massed troops near Ukraine's border and demanded the US-led NATO alliance rule out admitting the former Soviet state as a member of expanding further eastward. Washington has said it cannot accept these demands, although it is willing to engage on other aspects of Russia's proposal by discussing missile deployments or limits on the size of military exercises. Peskov has mentioned the situation would be clear after 2 further rounds of talks that Russia is due to hold this week with NATO and Brussels on Wednesday and at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe in Vienna on Thursday. Russian and US negotiators gave no sign of narrowing their differences in briefings to reporters after the first session in Geneva. US Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman has said that they were firm in pushing back on security proposals that are simply non-starters to the United States. The United States has urged Moscow to reverse its buildup of an estimated 100,000 troops near the border with Ukraine, which has prompted Ukrainian and Western concerns about a possible new invasions 8 years after Russia seized Crimea from Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ryabkov has made clear that Russia had no intention of attacking Ukraine. Now for a look at news making international headlines this Tuesday, 11th of January.
At least 22 stranded snow tourists die at Pakistan Hill Station. Trapped in vehicles, the tourists freeze to death after heavy snowfall in Pakistan Moree, northern Pakistan, where thousands have flocked to enjoy the snow. Among the dead are 9 children, and around 1,000 cars are stuck on the hill station. Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan says it was shocking and upsetting. With many still stranded, the government has declared Moree, which is 64 kilometers northeast of the capital Islamabad, a calamity-hit area. Pakistan's Interior Minister Sheikh Rashid Ahmed has said the local people are delivering blankets and food. Currently, only vehicles carrying blankets and food are allowed to come through the Moree. All other roads leading to the hill station have been sealed off. Army platoons and paramilitary forces have been deployed to help the civil administration in rescue operations. Snowfall, which began on Tuesday night, has continued at regular intervals, attracting thousands of tourists. Due to the huge number of visitors, many families ended up getting stranded on roads. Local media has reported that over 100,000 vehicles entered the hill station.
The pilot of a crashed aircraft in Los Angeles was pulled to safety by police officers seconds before a train collided into it on Sunday. Body camera footage shows a group of police officers pulling the bloodied pilot out of the downed Cessna that had landed on a level crossing near Wyden Airport and dragging him across the ground as the train arrived. It was a narrow escape. The officers and pilot were only a few feet away from the tracks when the train plowed through the crashed aircraft. The plane had a failed takeoff and landed on the train tracks at a popular intersection, said Luis Jimenez, a 21-year-old music composer who filmed the video. He added that seconds before impact, police officers saved the pilot and a piece of debris almost hit him as well. The pilot was the sole occupant of the aircraft that crashed shortly after takeoff and was transported to a regional trauma center by paramedics, according to an update by the Los Angeles Fire Department, LAFD. No one on board the train was injured, local media reported.
And massive floods around South Africa's eastern coast city of East London have killed at least 10 people and left hundreds without homes since the weekend. Footage shows rivers bursting through banks, leaving roads inundated. It has also been reported that hundreds of homes have washed away in the iron-roof informal settlements just outside the city. Scientists have predicted that climate change is the cause of the worsening floods and droughts along South Africa's eastern coastline. The deadly floods come despite the country's Department of Environment drawing up a plan for the country to adapt to climate change in 2019, which included strengthening its preparedness to respond more quickly to weather disasters and help victims recover.
EAC News fully supports the Royal Government of Cambodia's preventative and administrative measures against COVID-19. But we need you to play your part in helping bring the 20 February community transmission event to an end. Wash your hands regularly, sanitize wherever possible. Keep an eye on your body temperature. Use the Stop COVID QR code and maintain a safe social distance. But above all, please, please, please wear a mask. Only together can we beat COVID-19. If it's happening and you need to know about it, you'll get it all right here. EAC News brings you updates and breaking news in English across all of our platforms and channels. The EAC News app, YouTube, Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, and our website www.eacnews.asia. Join me, Andrew Barnes-Roberts, and the rest of the EAC News team every day on your favorite channels. EAC News, Cambodia made clear.
The president of the Siem Reap Provincial Royal House, Rata Serai, has questioned the Apsara Authority and the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts on a ceremony held late last year in the Angkor Temple complex. Photos of the Angkor Thanksgiving ceremony held in December 2021 circulated online, which shows performers wearing Baku clothing while performing the ceremony at the Angkor Temple complex on Bak Keng Mountain. Baku are royal servants who are only partake in ceremonies related to the king, such as the water festival. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more details.
The president of the Siem Reap Provincial Royal House, Rata Serai, told EAC News on Wednesday that he did not know the purpose of the ceremony and that no Baku group of the royal palace had been sent to the ceremony. He expressed dissatisfaction with this activity and asked the Apsara Authority and the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts to come forward and explain. He said, "The palace did not know anything. The Baku group that is stationed in the palace did not know anything, but the organizers said it was a real Baku group." EAC News has not yet been able to receive confirmation from Apsara Authority Director General Hang Po, while spokesman Long Kosal said he was temporarily out of work and therefore unable to provide information. Ministry of Culture spokesman Long Ponasirivat said he was unaware of the case and he did not receive any request for comment from the royal palace yet. He said the ministry would respond after they have received the letter. Cultural event observer Mr. Vatanak said that organizing ceremonies to show gratitude to ancestors is not a problem, but what is wrong is to wear Baku clothing since they are only the servants of the king. He added that through his observation, there have been 2 celebrations of people wearing Baku to perform religious ceremonies in the Angkor area, once during the water festival in 2019 and once again on Phnom Bak Kaeng in December 2021. He said that such ceremonies are not a problem and it is fine to celebrate, be happy, and preserve traditions and customs, but it is important that everyone remember their status and not interfere with matters related to the king. Darshana Gochan, EAC News.
The new UN Secretary General Special Envoy Noelen Heiser recommended Prime Minister Hun Sen for a successful visit to Myanmar and said that going forward, it is expected that he will be able to work with the United Nations to find other solutions in the region. She made this comment during a video conference with the Prime Minister on Thursday morning. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more details.
On Thursday morning, Prime Minister Hun Sen had a conversation with Special Envoy Noelen Heiser via video conference during which she raised a number of issues on Myanmar's progress and future direction for a solution to the ongoing crisis. During the meeting, Prime Minister Hun Sen stated that the Myanmar issue cannot continue to be stuck as it is and must find a way to break the stalemate and seize the opportunity to negotiate. The Minister delegate attached to the Prime Minister, Kao Kim Hoon, told reporters after the meeting that Prime Minister Hun Sen had stressed that Myanmar issue could not be resolved by either one party and demanded the involvement of other stakeholders, including the United Nations. In response, Special Envoy Nolene Hazer stated her support to Prime Minister Hun Sen, stressed the importance of ASEAN in resolving regional issues, and pledged to work with the 2022 ASEAN chair to improve the situation in Myanmar. Minister Kao Kum Huan stated that the Prime Minister and Special Envoy agreed on the need for urgent work, especially on the cessation of hostilities, the cessation of violence, and the provision of assistance and the dialogue with all stakeholders. He added that Nolene Hazer was very thankful to the Prime Minister because the United Nations understands and sees the importance of his actions and the role of regional organizations like ASEAN. The crisis in Myanmar stems from the military coup that took place on 1 February 2021, which saw the arrest of State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, President Win Myint, and other ruling party officials by the Myanmar Armed Forces, who declared they would not recognize the November 2020 election results and then handed over the leadership of the country to the Commander-in-Chief of the National Army, General Min Aung Hlaing. The coup has sparked widespread protests in Myanmar as many armed groups oppose this military regime. Myanmar continues to face one of the longest-running civil wars in the world. Prime Minister Hun Sen's visit to Myanmar on 7th to 8th January provided a positive signal for the resumption of peace talks in the country. The Prime Minister has called on ASEAN to establish two more mechanisms, a ceasefire coordination mechanism and an aid mechanism to maintain a stable situation which paves the way for the provision of further aid to the country. Darshana Gauchan, EAC News. Prime Minister Hun Sen and the Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Hsien Loong, have agreed to continue the work of the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, especially the work of the Special Envoy of the ASEAN Chair, to help resolve the crisis in Myanmar. This agreement was made during a meeting between Prime Minister Hun Sen and Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong over video conference Friday afternoon. During the meeting, the Prime Minister of Singapore thanked Prime Minister Hun Sen for his contribution to resolving the crisis in Myanmar and expressed his support for the efforts made by Cambodia during its chairmanship of ASEAN this year. The minister delegate attached to the Prime Minister, Minister Kao Kim Hoon, told reporters after the meeting that there was an exchange of views between the two prime ministers, and that Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong also agreed with Prime Minister Hun Sen that the resumption of work is to allow the ASEAN foreign ministers to have a meeting to review further work, especially the work of the ASEAN chair, which requires the help of Myanmar. The current meeting between the Prime Ministers of Cambodia and Singapore took place one day after the two countries' respective foreign ministers met over telephone. The Singaporean Foreign Minister, Vivian Balakrishnan, expressed regret that the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, previously scheduled for 18th to 19th January in Siem Reap, had been postponed. However, he expressed support for Cambodia's efforts towards resolving the crisis in Myanmar and for Cambodia's effort to communicate with all stakeholders to fully implement the 5-point consensus in a timely manner. The crisis in Myanmar stems from the military coup that took place on 1 February 2021, which saw the arrest of State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, President Win Myint, and other ruling party officials by the Myanmar Armed Forces, who refused to recognize the November 2020 election results and handed over the leadership of the country to the Commander-in-Chief of the National Army, General Min Aung Hlaing. The coup has angered the people of Myanmar, who have staged a series of protests as armed groups to oppose the military regime. Myanmar is now a country with two governments, about 20 ethnic armed groups, and one of the longest-running civil wars in the world. Prime Minister Hun Sen, as the 2022 ASEAN chair, visited Myanmar on 7th to 8th January to help find a solution to the national conflict and bring the country back into ASEAN. During the visit, Myanmar military leader Min Aung Hlaing promised Prime Minister Hun Sen that the Myanmar military would extend the ceasefire until the end of 2022, facilitate the ASEAN Special Envoy to meet with all stakeholders in the country, including ethnic armed groups, as well as give access to ASEAN aid for Myanmar.
Indian Foreign Minister Subramanian Jaishankar praised Cambodia's important role as chair of ASEAN in 2022 after monitoring the situation in Myanmar during a telephone conversation with Cambodian Foreign Minister Prak Sokhonn on Monday. During the phone call, the two sides expressed shared views on the important role ASEAN plays in assisting Myanmar find a peaceful solution through the effective implementation of the ASEAN 5 Points Consensus. Foreign Minister Prak Sokhonn informed his Indian counterpart about the positive results of Prime Minister Hun Sen's state visit to Myanmar on January 7 and 8. The Indian Foreign Minister said that India is a neighbor of Myanmar, sharing a 1,331-kilometer-long border, and has been monitoring the situation there closely. He added that India highly appreciates Cambodia's important role as ASEAN chair this year. Prime Minister Hun Sen traveled to Myanmar to meet with military leader Min Aung Hlaing on January 7 to help resolve the country's ongoing crisis and bring Myanmar back to ASEAN. During the meeting, Myanmar military leader Min Aung Hlaing promised to Prime Minister Hun Sen that the Myanmar military government will extend the ceasefire until the end of 2022, facilitate the process of receiving aid from ASEAN, and facilitate the visit of ASEAN Special Envoy to Myanmar to meet with all parties in the country, including ethnic armed groups. Singapore Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan has expressed regret that the ASEAN ministerial meeting, scheduled for 18 and 19 January in Siem Reap, has been postponed. However, he shows support for Cambodia's efforts to be positive on the issues in Myanmar. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more details.
Cambodian Foreign Minister Prak Sokhonn said after a telephone conversation with the Singaporean Foreign Minister on Thursday afternoon that he had a frank conversation with Vivian Balakrishnan in support of Cambodia's efforts to communicate with all stakeholders to fully and timely implement the 5-point consensus. However, during the call, the Singaporean Foreign Minister expressed regret over the postponement of the ASEAN Foreign Ministers' meeting, which did not go as planned. The planned meeting was postponed because it is difficult for many ASEAN foreign ministers to travel to the meeting. Foreign Ministry spokesman Khoi Kung said the decision to postpone the meeting did not affect the work of the ASEAN ministers, nor did it affect the position and role of the ASEAN Special Envoy, Deputy Prime Minister Prak Sokhonn. Cambodian Foreign Minister Prak Sokhonn had said that his role as Special Envoy of the ASEAN chair on Myanmar would be formally announced during the ASEAN ministerial meeting. However, so far it has not been confirmed when the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting will be rescheduled. The ASEAN Ministerial Retreat was established in 1967 to be responsible for ASEAN political security cooperation, as well as ASEAN's relations with external partners. The AMM meets at least 4 times a year and may convene during special meetings when necessary to discuss issues that need urgent attention from ASEAN. The AMM regularly reviews and discusses efforts to build the ASEAN community, its strategic future direction, and the conduct of ASEAN external relations. Darshana Gauchan, EAC News.
Former political activist of CNRP, T. Sovantha, said that Sam Rainsy's claim to take more than 400 pages of a conversation between her and the Prime Minister is not a true story, and that this was clarified by the Cambodian courts for her already in 2016. She added that the fact that Sam Rainsy raised this issue again shows his level of political knowledge and how he has no wisdom or new ideas to continue in politics. EAC News reporter Darshana Gauchan has more details.
T. Sovantha wrote on her Facebook page on Thursday morning, urging Sam Rainsy to expose and promote the younger generation of the opposition rather than use old stories to do politics like this. She wrote saying that she had seen many young dissidents, both local and foreign, who had good ability, goodwill, and had been loyal to him to this day. Thus, Sam Rainsy should be promoting this new young generation and not bringing up old stories that concern her. She asked that Sam Rainsy forget about her and not bother her anymore, as she wants to live a normal life and participate in helping local people, helping the country to the best of her ability. T. Sovantha's reaction comes after Sam Rainsy yesterday posted an article in which he asked the messaging app company Line to confirm an alleged message conversation between Prime Minister Hun Sen and T. Sovantha between 2016 and 2017. Previously, in December 2017, the Phnom Penh Municipal Court gave a verdict on Sam Rainsy's case in connection with 2 defamation lawsuits filed by Prime Minister Hun Sen and T. Sovantha over Sam Rainsy's claim that Prime Minister Hun Sen gave $1 million to T. Sovantha in exchange for attacking the CNRP based on a 400-page message exchange. The court ordered Sam Rainsy to pay $1 million in compensation to Prime Minister Hun Sen and another $500,000 to Thiso Van Tha. Darshana Gauchan, EAC News.
The Phnom Penh Capital Administration has set a date for the 4th dose vaccination campaign to start for civil servants under and in the capital administration, as well as for the general population from Friday, 14th January. EAC News reporter Siri Pokong has the details.
In the announcement made by the Phnom Penh Capital Administration, the 4-dose vaccines will be available for health officials, leaders, civil servants, and staff of the Phnom Penh Administration from 14 to 15 January, and for staff of departments around the Phnom Penh Administration from 16 to 17 January. For the Phnom Penh Municipal Police Commissioner and the Department of Land Management, 4-dose vaccines will begin on 18 January, and for the Bus Authority, the Phnom Penh Municipal Market Commission, and private health workers on 19 January. For officials who miss the vaccine on the stated days, there will be an additional day on 20 January for them to get the vaccine. The general population over the age of 60 will be vaccinated from 21 to 31 January, and those over the age of 18 will be vaccinated from 1 to 14 February. The royal government mechanism to accelerate the vaccination of the booster dose and the 4th dose was made in response to the recent Omicron outbreak, which has so far infected 28 cases in the community. However, in this regard, Prime Minister Hun Sen has also stated that the condition for receiving the booster dose must be in accordance with the specified health status. If more than 4 months have not yet passed since getting the 3rd dose, health authorities or doctors will not be able to authorize the 4th dose jab, as it will not guarantee safety. Sri Pokong, EAC News.
The Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports will announce the high school baccalaureate exam results for Phnom Penh and Kendal Province at 3 p.m. on Friday, 14 January, and other provinces on Saturday, 15 January. Previously, it was announced that the results will be released between 18 and 19 January 2022, but it is not yet clear why the date for the exam results was changed. EAC News reporter Siri Pokong has more.
According to a press release issued by the Ministry of Education on Thursday, 13 January, the Department of Education in each provincial capital in Cambodia would be receiving the list of examination results at the writing centers in each constituency, according to the updated time and date. For the opening of the examination result package in each district, the director of the educational institution must be present, including a representative of the Office of Education, Youth and Sports of the Municipal District Commune Administration and a representative of the local authorities. In addition, the announcement of the baccalaureate result must be linked to the report sent back to the Department of Exam Affairs via social media, Telegram, confirming the status of the received exam result package with the stamp of the Department of Exam Affairs, as well as the exact time the result package was opened. The high school baccalaureate exam for the 2020 to 2021 academic year was held on 27 to 28 December 2021, with a total of 114,185 participating candidates. Kong Srei Poa, EAC News.
The results of the 2020-2021 high school baccalaureate exam were released today, a few days earlier than previously scheduled. Students could choose whether to receive their results online or in person, a measure that was introduced just this morning in order to limit the crowding and prevent the spread of COVID-19. Last year, in 2020, there was no high school exams because of the pandemic, and all students received passing marks. This year, EAC News went out to see how students were feeling after receiving their results.
High school students in Phnom Penh and Kendal Province received their baccalaureate exam results today. Following a full year of studying online, many students felt the pressure of in-person examinations, a mix of both excitement and stress. EAC News went out to interview some students outside an examination center to see how they were feeling after receiving their results.
The result met my expectations. Actually, they are more than what I expected. I expected that I might just pass the exam. But actually, I got a good result. I got C grade.
Actually, I expected that I would get an E grade, but instead I got a D. I'm so happy. At first, I was so nervous because I looked at the result of the wrong name, but then I scrolled again and I saw that I passed. Now I'm shaking with excitement.
It's more than what I expected. I thought I would get an E grade and I was ready to accept whatever I got. But it came out to be more than what I expected. I got a D grade. I was so excited that I ran off on my motorbike because I saw the announcement on Facebook, then rushed here to ask if they had already stamped the exam results.
The high school baccalaureate exams for the 2020 to 2021 academic year was held on 27th to 28th December 2021, with a total participation of 114,185 candidates.
A U.S. judge has rejected a bid by Britain's Prince Andrew to dismiss Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit accusing the Duke of York of sexually abusing her when she was 17 and being trafficked by the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. In a decision made public on Wednesday, U.S. District Judge in Manhattan, Lewis Kaplan, has said it was premature to consider Prince's efforts to cast doubt on Giuffre's accusations, though he would be allowed to do so at a trial. Kaplan has also mentioned it was too soon to decide whether Giuffre and Epstein intended to release people like Andrew in their 2009 settlement agreement. Such settlements can restrict plaintiffs from pursuing further litigation, even against third parties. Lawyers for Andrew and Giuffre did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Andrew has denied Giuffre's accusations that he forced her to have sex more than 2 decades ago at the London home of former Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell, and also denied abusing her at 2 other Epstein properties. As a young man, Prince Andrew was one of the most popular royals, acclaimed by the British press for his active service as a helicopter pilot during the 1982 Falklands War and earning the nickname Randy Andy for his courting of glamorous girlfriends. Prince Andrew's 1986 marriage to flame-haired Sarah Ferguson, which was hailed as a breath of fresh air to the monarchy, ended in a divorce a decade later, but she still remains one of the strongest supporters. Prince Andrew stopped down from public duties on 20 November 2019, saying the controversy surrounding his ill-judged association with late U.S. financier Jeffrey Epstein has caused major disruption to the royal family's work. The rare interview aired on 15 November was an attempt to draw a line under scandal after months of headlines about Andrew's ties to Epstein, who killed himself in August 2019 while being held on federal sex trafficking charges. Prince Andrew, Queen Elizabeth's second son, denies the allegation of having sex with a 17-year-old girl procured for him by Epstein. One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Giuffre, has said she was forced to have sex with Andrew in London, New York, and on a private Caribbean island between 1999 and 2002. The prince categorically denies all of the allegations. The scandal escalated following Andrew's rambling explanations in an interview with the BBC, which many viewers felt was incredulous, and his apparent lack of compassion for Epstein's victims, which has drawn widespread condemnation. Royal commentators say Andrews has always been fiercely protective of his royal status, insisting that his daughters Eugene and Beatrice were princesses, a contrast to the children of his elder sister Anne, who have no title. When asked about Epstein case and accusations involving Prince Andrew, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has said nobody is above the law and nobody who has committed something should be open to questioning and investigation about it. Asked to comment on Prince Andrew's retirement from public life following the allegations against him, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that he believes the victims should have justice and that the law must be done and must be seen to be done. The differences between Russia and NATO over Ukraine will be difficult to bridge, the head of the Atlantic Alliance, Jens Stoltenberg, has said on Wednesday, after 4 hours of talks where Moscow pressed its demands for security guarantees from the West.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says that there are significant differences between NATO allies and Russia, and that these differences will not be easy to bridge, but is still a positive sign that all NATO allies and Russia sat down together to engage on substantive topics. Russia has forced the West to come to the negotiating table by massing some 100,000 troops near the border with Ukraine, a former Soviet republic that aspires to join NATO.
Russia raised the proposals that they published in December, aimed at addressing their security concerns. These include demands to stop admitting any new members to NATO and to withdraw forces from Eastern allies. Allies on their side reaffirmed NATO's open door policy and the right for each nation to choose its own security arrangements. Allies made clear that they will not renounce their ability to protect and defend each other, including with presence of troops in the eastern part of the alliance. On membership and on NATO's open door, all allies are united on the core principle that each and every nation has the right to choose its own path. This is enshrined in a lot of fundamental documents, many different documents, which are the foundation for European security. And therefore also allies totally agree that it is only Ukraine and 30 allies that can decide when Ukraine is ready to become a NATO member. No one else has anything to say, and of course Russia doesn't have a veto on whether Ukraine can become a NATO member. So Russia has military forces in Georgia, in Ukraine, in Crimea, and also in Moldova. And these forces are there without the consent of the governments of these countries. They are uninvited and not welcomed. And NATO allies, also in the meeting today, called on Russia to withdraw those forces and to respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Georgia, of Ukraine, of Moldova. NATO is a defensive alliance. We have never forced or coerced any nation into our alliance. So this idea that, for instance, NATO enlargement is aggressive, absolutely not true. And this is deterrence. This is defensive, and the purpose is to preserve peace. It's not to provoke conflict, but to preserve peace, prevent conflict. And in this way, and of course we will, and if Russia once again uses force against Ukraine and further invades Ukraine, then we have to seriously look into the need to further increase our presence in the eastern part of the alliance.
Russia denies planning to invade but says it needs a series of guarantees to its own security, including a halt to any further NATO expansion and a withdrawal of alliance forces from Central and Eastern Europe nations that joined the alliance after the Cold War. The NATO head has said any use of Russian force against Ukraine would be a serious political mistake for which Russia would pay a high price. He has reiterated NATO's position that only Ukraine and NATO can decide whether the country becomes a member. However, Stoltenberg said NATO was ready for further talks with Moscow on issues including arms control and missile deployments. Russia has asked for more time to come back with an answer on this matter. Stoltenberg's remarks made clear that there had been no breakthrough at the talks 2 days after Russian and U.S. diplomats met in Geneva and reported to narrowing of their differences.
Foreign ministers of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also called the North Atlantic Alliance, have said on Friday that they remain united against any possible Russian military action in Ukraine and signaled that many security demands made by the Kremlin were unacceptable.
The 30 ministers held a video call ahead of U.S.-Russia negotiations in Geneva on Monday, which were followed by a NATO-Russia meeting in Brussels and broader talks in Vienna, prompted by Moscow's demand for security guarantees. Russia has deployed large numbers of troops near its border with Ukraine and wants legally binding guarantees that NATO will halt its eastward expansion and end military cooperation with the former Soviet republics of Ukraine and Georgia. Moscow denies U.S. suggestions that it is planning to invade Ukraine and instead accuses Kiev of building up its forces in the east of the country. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, who chaired the call when the foreign ministers welcomed the prospects of talks with Moscow next week, after months of both sides accusing the other of jeopardizing peace and stability in Europe. But speaking at a news conference at NATO's headquarters in Brussels, Stoltenberg stated that the idea that Ukraine is a threat to Russia is to put the whole thing upside down. There is no prospect of either Ukraine or Georgia, which both have territorial disputes with Moscow, joining NATO anytime soon. But Stoltenberg said the admission of North Macedonia and Montenegro showed that the door remained open. Stoltenberg further says that it would be unacceptable to grant Russia a veto over which countries could join the US-led alliance in the future. NATO wants Moscow to re-engage with the peace process in eastern Ukraine, where some 15,000 people have been killed in a 7-year conflict between Ukrainian government troops and Russian-backed separatists.
Londoners have called for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to apologize on Wednesday after revelations of a Bring Your Own Booze party at Downing Street during a COVID-19 lockdown.
Opposition lawmakers have called for Prime Minister Boris Johnson to resign, and some from his own Conservative Party have also said he should quit if he is found to have broken strict laws his government brought in to prevent the spread of COVID-19. In London, law student Daniel Miller has said Prime Minister Johnson was in a shocking position and called on the Conservative Party to take responsibility for the scandal.
I certainly should apologise. It's such an embarrassing position to be in, frankly, for him and for the country as a whole, of which he is supposedly a figurehead. The fact that we still don't entirely know the truth of what happened, and the fact that there's been so much denial and then contradiction of that denial, especially through this new Dominic Cummings revelation, which is always a bit dodgy. It's a shocking position to be in, and yes, he should apologise, and hopefully someone in the Conservative Party will take responsibility for it.
Yes, absolutely. I think he's handled it terribly, everything, but fundamentally, if you can't get people that you directly employ and potentially yourself to follow the rules, then you should definitely apologise for it.
100%, because so many of us haven't got to see our loved ones over certain periods since COVID, and they just break the rules and do what they want. And they've been doing gatherings, they've been probably seeing their families, and a lot of us haven't. And we don't know where the years have gone since COVID, and they just do what they want. So yeah, ridiculous.
The Prime Minister and his partner Kerry had mingled with about 40 staff in the garden of Downing Street after his principal private secretary, Martin Reynolds, sent an email invitation for the party using the pronoun we. Johnson, who won a landslide election victory in 2019, has faced intense scrutiny over the past month after a video emerged showing his staff laughing and joking about at a different party also held in Downing Street during the 2020 Christmas lockdown. This latest scandal, if substantiated by an internal inquiry, would be the most damaging yet for Johnson's future. His own lawmakers show signs of losing patience after a series of scandals, and polls show Johnson's Conservative Party slipping behind Labour.
Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said on Thursday that Washington's rejection of Moscow's key security demands were leading talks to a dead end. The Russian Deputy Foreign Minister has said he saw no reason to organize a new round of talks in the near future on security guarantees, but he has mentioned dialogue was for now continued on various fronts. He said the main problem is that the United States and its NATO allies are not prepared under any guise to meet the key demands of Russia for NATO, which they have discussed and analyzed over and over again. The demands are for the non-proliferation of NATO, the rollback of alliance infrastructure, and a return to its 1997 borders, and, of course, on the issue of legally binding guarantees on the non-deployment of systems in the immediate vicinity of Russia's borders. The foreign minister also said that they can no longer retreat, and they can already see that there will be other measures, other actions against their opponents if they don't consider their demands and their needs in the end. Earlier, the Kremlin gave a bleak assessment of Russia's security talks with the United States and NATO this week, describing them as unsuccessful and saying there was disagreement on fundamental issues. The highly infectious Omicron coronavirus variant causes less severe disease than the Delta strain, but it remains a dangerous virus, particularly for those who are unvaccinated, the head of the World Health Organization (WHO) has announced on Wednesday.
The World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus has said more than 90 countries were yet to meet the target of vaccinating 40% of their population, and more than 85% of people in Africa were yet to receive a single dose.
Let's be clear. While Omicron causes less severe disease than Delta, it remains a dangerous virus, particularly for those who are unvaccinated. Almost 50,000 deaths a week is 50,000 deaths too many. Learning to live with this virus does not mean we can or should accept this number of deaths. We must not allow this virus a free ride or wave the white flag, especially when so many people around the world remain unvaccinated. Some of the supply constraints we faced last year are now starting to ease, but we still have a long way to go to reach our target of vaccinating 70% of the population of every country by the middle of this year. 90 countries have still not reached the 40% target, and 36 of those countries have vaccinated less than 10% of their populations. WHO and our partners are actively supporting these countries to overcome the bottlenecks they face in leadership and coordination, lack of supply visibility, short shelf life of donated vaccines, limited cold chain capacity, vaccine confidence, health worker shortages, and competing priorities. WHO hosted a global webinar attended by clinicians from around the world on the clinical management of COVID-19 during pregnancy, childbirth, and the early postnatal period. Pregnant women are not a higher risk of contracting COVID-19, but if they're infected, they're at higher risk for severe disease. That's why it's vital that pregnant women in all countries have access to vaccines to protect their own lives and those of their babies. We also call for pregnant women to be included in clinical trials for new treatments and vaccines. Fortunately, mother-to-baby transmission in utero or during birth is very rare, and no active virus has been identified in breast milk.
He has also said the majority of people hospitalized around the world with COVID-19 were unvaccinated, and that if transmissions were not curtailed, there was greater risk of another variant emerging that could be even more transmittable and deadlier than Omicron. In its weekly epidemiological report on Tuesday, the WHO reported that cases have increased by 55% or 15 million in the weeks of January 9, compared to a week earlier, with it by far the most numbers of cases reported in a single week.
Now for a look at Newsweek International headlines this Thursday, 13th of January.
A large explosion on a road leading to the international airport in Somalia's capital Mogadishu on Wednesday killed at least 8 people and injured 9 others, as reported by health officials. The road also services a major police academy and compound where United Nations and foreign government staff members and officials reside. It is the latest attack to hit Somalia's capital as the country grapples with political infighting and growing humanitarian crisis. The bombing, part of a string of attacks blamed on the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab extremist group that has crippled the country in recent months, comes as the country's leaders struggle to resolve a political crisis that has distracted the government from the deteriorating security situation. Somali Memo, a new website affiliated with Al-Shabaab, has said the militants have claimed responsibility for the attack on Wednesday. It said the group had targeted a convoy of vehicles carrying white security officers. The group aims to overthrow the central government and impose a strict interpretation of the Islamic law. It carries out frequent gun and bomb attacks on security and government targets, but also on civilians. It also carries out attacks against African Union peacekeeping troops.
Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA, on Wednesday has blamed an explosion along a major gasoline pipeline on criminal sabotage, adding that the line would be repaired swiftly. Authorities in Venezuela's eastern Anzoátegui state reported a blast late on Tuesday, which State Governor Luis José Marcano stated was presumably caused by attempts to perforate the pipeline. PDVSA has said the pipeline distributes gasoline throughout Venezuela's eastern states, adding that it had deployed all available teams to repair the breach and prevent service disruptions. There was no immediate confirmation of who was responsible for the blast or whether it caused casualties. Venezuela faces gasoline shortage following years of divestment in the country's refineries, which can process 1.3 million barrels a day but operates at low capacity.
Oh, there it is.
4 people, including a 2-month-old infant, have survived after a helicopter crash outside the church in West Philadelphia on Tuesday. A drone video shows debris and remnants of the medical helicopter outside the Drexel Hill United Methodist Church, which first responders and emergency vehicles is standing by in the densely populated residential neighborhood. The chopper carrying the baby, a nurse and 2 helicopter crew members, was on its way to a Philadelphia hospital on Tuesday afternoon when it crashed on the front steps of the church. All 4 occupants were able to self-extricate without sustaining life-threatening injuries, officials have reported. An Upper Darby police superintendent told local media it was an absolute miracle, that no one has injured and that no trees or power lines were brought down in the crash.
The new government of Kazakhstan took office after being sworn in on Wednesday. The first meeting of the new government was presided over by the country's new Prime Minister Alikan Ismailov, who was nominated by Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev 1 day ago.
The Parliament of Kazakhstan elected Ali Khan Ismailov as their new Prime Minister on Tuesday. The 49-year-old official previously served as Kazakhstan Finance Minister from 2018 to 2020. In 2019, he became the first deputy prime minister in the cabinet, which has dismissed by President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev during last week's violent protests in the country that began over spiking fuel price. After a day of fierce demonstration in the resource-rich Central Asian nation, during which Tokayev ordered the police and army to shoot protesters on sight, around 9,900 people have been arrested. Foreign troops are also set to withdraw from the country, Tokayev has told Parliament on Tuesday. The main mission of the Collective Security Treaty Organization troops has been completed. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who sent troops across the border into Kazakhstan to help quell the unrest, has accused external force of orchestrating the raids. He has said, the events in Kazakhstan are not the first and far from the last attempt to interfere in the internal affairs of our state from the outside. At the meetings held both online and offline, the new Prime Minister Ismailov stressed that the primary tasks for the current government are to fulfill the instructions of President Tokayev, improve the qualities of people's lives, sustain the economic growth momentum, combat the COVID-19 pandemic, repair the damage caused by the recent raid, and pull the country out of the massive crisis. The situation in Kazakhstan has become more stable now. Out of 20 airports in the country, 18 have resumed their operation. All railway stations are open and access restrictions on national highway have been lifted. Meanwhile, the public transport system and passenger rail transport system in the city have resumed operation as well. Violent protests backed by fuel price hike rocked Kazakhstan for several days, leading to multiple deaths and many injuries. The press service of the president said on Sunday that some 5,800 people were detained in Kazakhstan amid the riots, including numbers of foreigners. In response to the protests, Tokaja has accepted the previous government's resignation and has sought help from the Collective Security Treaty Organization to put an end to the mounting unrest.
Now for a look at news making international headlines this Friday, 14th of January.
Firefighters worked to put out a massive fire that quickly spread across a commercial building in Adelanto, California on Wednesday afternoon, which resulted in 2 people being arrested after authorities discovered an illegal marijuana operation. The fire spread to a commercial courtyard, with fire crews battling flames and trying to repair downed power lines. The San Bernardino County Fire Department was the lead agency battling the fire with the help from the Apple Valley Fire Protection District in the Victorville Fire Department. A knockdown was reported around 8:27 p.m.
A wildfire in South Africa's Claremont, a coastal town in the Overberg region of the Western Cape province, continues to wreak havoc, destroying property and causing widespread damage to vegetation and plantations. The Claremont fire is raging just outside Cape Town, stretching local firefighting resources to their limits.
The last estimate that we had was this morning. We're looking at about 3,700 hectares then of fynbos and pine and slash. So far, to my knowledge, 1 structure has been lost and nothing else. So we hope we are able to save all the structures.
I left my city, that settlement. It's a wildfire. Yeah, we saw it in 2 days back, this fire, but they try to manage it, but not yet. Yeah, they try to control the fire, but the fire is damaging the city now.
The winds are not helping, local residents say, and a wind shift will make the extinguishing efforts a lot more difficult. The western side of the area was under threat. A Huey helicopter is releasing down water on the fence line. Landowners have joined the efforts to contain the blaze, which has already damaged some of their properties, as well as the forest. The fire has also threatened local Gulf states and wine farms and jumped the road at many locations as it spreads to other areas. Huge plumes of smoke severely affected visibility, leading to road closures to keep motorists safe. The fire is being fanned by the southeasterly winds that usually arrive in the summertime and make the blaze very difficult to contain. For now, firefighters will continue with their efforts to contain the blaze and are hoping that respected rainfall will assist them.
An aerial footage from Isabela Island in the Galapagos, Ecuador, shows the lengthy expansion of lava flowing from Wolf Volcano a week after its eruption on January 6. After 7 years of relative inactivity, the volcano erupted at midnight last Thursday, causing smoke and ash clouds to rise up to 12,000 feet. Lava flowing from the volcano has covered about 15 kilometers and is moving through the path of past eruptions, said the Ecuadorian Ministry of Environment, Water and Ecological Transition. Ecuador's Environment Minister, Gustavo Manrique, visited the site 3 days after the eruption and said the lava was less than 5 kilometers from the coast and flowing far from where wildfire species are primarily located.
EAC News fully supports the Royal Government of Cambodia's preventative and administrative measures against COVID-19. But we need you to play your part in helping bring the 20 February community transmission event to an end. Wash your hands regularly, sanitize wherever possible. Keep an eye on your body temperature. Use the Stop COVID QR code and maintain a safe social distance. But above all, please, please, please wear a mask. Only together can we beat COVID-19. If it's happening and you need to know about it, you'll get it all right here. EAC News brings you updates and breaking news in English across all of our platforms and channels. The EAC News app, YouTube, Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, and our website www.eacnews.asia. Join me, Andrew Barnes-Roberts, and the rest of the EAC News team every day on your favorite channels. EAC News, Cambodia made clear.
An Australian judge ruled on Monday that Novak Djokovic be released from immigration detention, finding the government's decision to revoke the tennis star's visa to enter the country unreasonable. In a court filing on Saturday, Djokovic's lawyer argued that he had been given a medical exemption as he had contracted and recovered from a COVID-19 infection detected on 16 December. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has said Djokovic will not receive special treatment.
Rules are rules, and there are no special cases. Rules are rules. It's what I said to you yesterday. That's the policy of the government, and has been our government's strong border protection policies, and particularly in relation to the pandemic, that has ensured that Australia has one of the lowest death rates from COVID anywhere in the world.
Djokovic has spent 4 days in an immigration detention in a Melbourne hotel, with his Australian fans demonstrating outside the premises, which also houses refugees seeking asylum in Australia.
I spoke today with him a couple of hours ago. He was good. We didn't spoke a lot, but we spoke a few minutes. And he was trying to sleep, but he couldn't. As a mother, what can I say? If you are a mother, you can just imagine how can I feel. I feel terrible. Since yesterday, last 24 hours, that they are keeping him as a prisoner. It's just not fair. It's not human.
Reaction from other Australians has been mixed, with many condemning special treatment for the tennis star. The Australian government had not given Djokovic assurance of a medical exemption that would allow him to enter Australia without a COVID-19 vaccination, government lawyers said in a court filing on Sunday. The 9 times Australian Open champion is seeking his 21st Grand Slam title at the tournament, which starts on January 17. The drama surrounding the tennis star has rocked the tennis world, caused tensions between Serbia and Australia, and become a flashpoint for opponents of vaccines mandates around the world. Judge Anthony Kelly ordered Djokovic to be released within 30 minutes and his passport and other travel documents to be returned to him, rekindling the world #1's chances to win a record 21st Grand Slam title at the upcoming Australian Open. However, lawyers for the federal government told the court the country's immigration minister was reserving the right to exercise his personal power to again revoke Djokovic's visa. Celebrations erupted outside Yaounde's Olembe Stadium on Sunday as host country Cameroon came from behind to beat Burkina Faso 2-1 in the opening match of the Africa Cup of Nations finals. Burkina Faso, who were without their coach Kamo Malo, and 6 players who tested positive for COVID-19, gave away 2 clumsy penalties after Gustavo Sangare silenced the home crowd, estimated to be around 40,000 people at the newly built Olembe Stadium, with the first goal of the game.
Je suis très ému, très content, sincèrement, parce que
I'm really moved and happy. We are not out of the wood yet, but victory is resounding for us. The Lions proved they are lions. We are really happy with this victory. And we pray to God so He can continue to give us the power and the strength to keep going forward until we win the competition, so we can prove that Cameroon is still the #1 team in Africa.
Cameroun reste toujours le numéro 1 en Afrique.
Sangare finished with his left foot at the back post in the 24th minute to hand the Burkinabe a surprise lead in the Group A encounter. But captain Bertrand Traoré and defender Issoufou Dayo gave away penalties in quick succession late in the first half. Vincent Aboubakar, who was part of Cameroon's winning team at the 2017 Cup of Nations in neighboring Gabon, took away both kicks for a 2-1 lead.
It was beautiful. Cameroon did well. They surpassed us. They played well. We fought, but they surpassed us. Congratulations to Cameroon.
Organizers ended the evening with fireworks above the stadium as supporters cheered along. Saudi Arabia waived its requirement for visitors to be fully vaccinated to allow soccer players from Spain to compete in the Spanish Super Cup on Saudi soil. Full vaccination is mandatory to enter the kingdom, according to guidelines on the government website. Yet, 3 sources close to the matter said exemptions were made after the Spanish Football Association negotiated with local authorities to allow all players and staff from Real Madrid, Barcelona, Athletic Bilbao, and Atletico Madrid to make the trip and play in the tournament, which runs from January 10 to 16. Brazil coach Tite announced on Thursday, January 13, that he was leaving Atletico Madrid defender Renan Lodi out of his squad for the next 2 World Cup qualifiers because the player has not had a full course of COVID-19 vaccines. Lodi is currently in Saudi Arabia, where Atletico Madrid will play Atletico Bilbao later on Thursday in the second semi-final of the revamped Super Cup. A source close to the player told Reuters that he has had the first dose of the vaccine and is scheduled to take the second on January 31. The source said Lodi had not been vaccinated previously because he had contracted COVID-19. In Madrid, where Lodi is based, the waiting period to be vaccinated against the virus after contracting COVID-19 was 6 months up until August 2021. It has been 1 month since then. Lodi tested positive for COVID-19 in April 2020. Saudi authorities have not responded to a request for comment. The Spanish FA declined to comment on the Lodi situation, or say if any other player or staff member who was not fully vaccinated had entered Saudi Arabia. The Spanish Super Cup was moved to the country after the RFEF agreed a contract with the Saudis until 2029 that will earn the governing body €30 million, $34 million a year. The vaccination status of athletes has been thrust into the spotlight in the lead-up to the Tennis Australian Open. Uncertainty hangs over world #1 Novak Djokovic's participation in the tournament, with the Australian government yet to decide whether to cancel his visa for a second time over concerns about his medical exemption from Australia's vaccine mandate. The 34-year-old, a vaccine skeptic, fueled widespread anger in Australia when he announced he was heading to Melbourne with a medical exemption from requirements for visitors to be inoculated against COVID-19. Qatar's Nasser Al Attiyah stayed comfortably ahead in the Dakar Rally as Sebastien Loeb moved back into second place with a stage victory at the start of Week 2 in Saudi Arabia on Sunday. Loeb's second stage win of 2022 left France's 9 times world rally champion driving from the Bahrain Raid Extreme team some 45 minutes adrift of his factory Toyota rival in the car category with 5 stages to go. Al Attiyah, chasing his 4th Dakar title in the desert dunes, was second in the 402-kilometer time and 7th stage from the capital Riyadh west to Al Dawawini, but more than 5 minutes lower than Loeb. Frenchman Adrien Van Beveren took the overall lead in the motorcycles from Britain's Sam Sunderland, who fell back to 4th and some 5.5 minutes off the pace after finishing in 28th. Chilean rider José Ignacio Cornejo won the stage on a Honda. Australian Danielle Sanders, Sunderland's Gas teammate who won the 1st and 6th stages, was rushed to the hospital after crashing and injuring his left arm on the way to a timed stage he had been due to lead off in. The rally ends in Jeddah on Friday, January 14. A large-scale swimming center located in Battambang City was inaugurated on Monday to serve international competitions. The inauguration ceremony was presided over by Minister of Interior Saw Kang and featured demonstrations of water sports such as water polo and swimming competitions. Speaking at the inauguration ceremony, Minister of Interior Saw Kang said the new swimming center is another sport venue in line with the development of sports in the country, as well as an upgrade in training facilities for the 2023 Southeast Asian Games and Asian Paralympic Games, which Cambodia will be hosting. The Minister of Interior has also stated that Cambodia has transformed from a country left in ashes from the Pol Pot regime to a developing country in all fields, including sports, with many athletes training in different categories. He has also mentioned that such athletes are competing at the international level and winning gold and silver medals for the motherland of Cambodia, which needs to strengthen its sports sector to make the country a regional and international reference in this area. According to the Minister of Public Works and Transport, San Chantol, the total cost of the new swimming center in Battambang was $2 million and was constructed with the participation of national and provincial partners as well as other philanthropists. This includes contributing more than $730,000 to the national budget for electricity and water. The 2021 National Cycling Championship has started today in Siem Reap Province. The sporting event will take place over 3 days and will conclude on Thursday. It is a major competition preparing athletes for the Southeast Asian Games 2022 in Vietnam and the Southeast Asian Games in 2023, which will be held in Cambodia. Secretary-General of the Cambodian Cycling Federation, Nung Chamram, has stated in a press conference the federation is working hard to strengthen Cambodian resources for cycling, as well as developing talent capacities for international competitions such as the 2023 Southeast Asian Games, which Cambodia will be hosting. The 2021 National Cycling Championship will also provide the Cambodian Cycling Federation, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports, and the Olympic Committee technical experience to organize the sport when the Southeast Asian Games starts in 2023. The contest will be divided in 2 categories: road bike, which includes man junior, man elite, and man master road bikes, and mountain bike, which includes man junior, man elite, women, and man master mountain bikes. Reigning Dakar Rally champions suffered contrasting fortunes on Wednesday, with French veteran Stéphane Peter Hansen winning the 10th stage in the car category, while Argentine motorcycle rider Kevin Benavides suffered technical problems and retired from the rally. The stage victory was a first on this year's event for Mr. Dakar Peter Hansen, a 14-time winner on 2 wheels and 4, and now driving an electric hybrid Audi, who dropped out of the contention for the title in Saudi Arabia last week. Qatar's Nasser Al Attiyah retained a comfortable lead with 2 stages remaining before the finish in Jeddah on Friday. although closest rival Sebastian Loeb cut the gap to 32 minutes and 40 seconds. Loeb, a 9-time World Rally champion driving for the Bahrain Raid Extreme team, was 5th on the 375-kilometer stage from Wadi al-Dawasir to Bisha, with Peter Hansen leading Audi teammate Carlos Sainz. 3 times Dakar winner Al Attiyah was 7th, 5 minutes and 50 seconds off the pace, and also collected a 5 minutes penalty for a breach of seatbelt regulations. Benavid ended the defense of his title when his KTM motorcycle broke down 133 kilometers into the stage and was unable to fix it. He won last year riding a Honda to become the first South American to win the event, now in its 44th edition on a motorcycle. The 33-year-old had been 5th overall, some 10 minutes behind his Austrian teammate and overnight leader Matthias Walkener, who ended the day 4th with France's Adrien van Beveren taking over at the top. Britain's Sam Sunderland was 2nd overall, nearly 60 minutes adrift in a stage won by Australian Toby Price on a KTM. German athletes participating in the Beijing Winter Olympics received their official Games uniforms on Thursday, which is about to start by next month. Among them was ski jumper Markus Eisenblincher, who is counting on the power of the German winter athletes.
I think we have a very good team and a strong team. Of course, anything can always happen, but I am not personally stressed by it. In the end, it is a competition and we will give our best performance, and of course, there are possibility of medals. But yes, it just comes to what happened on the day, and I hope that we all prepare well enough for it.
Ice hockey player Moritz Müller prefers not to get involved in the politics, but to focus on the sporting aspect.
This discussion never actually take place with the athletes themselves, but all way around and above, and it is usually not about the interest of the athletes, rather mostly about the interest of some third parties who want to draw an advantage for themselves from the fact that the game might be cancelled, because they themselves might have something to gain from it. For me, personally, the Olympics Games are the greatest things you can experience as an athlete. And that's why I want them to take place. I want us to be there.
The USA had called on the International Olympic Committee, IOC, to postpone the Winter Olympics in February 2020 because of China's disregard for human rights. Among other things, the US accuses China of genocide against the Uyghur Muslim minority. The US declared it would not send diplomatic representatives to Beijing. China rejected allegations of human rights violation and announced resolute countermeasures. Australia, Great Britain, and Canada joined the US boycott. Japan will also now send a government delegation to the Olympic Games in Beijing. Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock and Interior Minister Nancy Faeser announced that they would stay away from the Winter Games. However, they did not justify their decision with a diplomatic boycott. The rapid spread of the highly contagious corona variant Omicron is putting China's plan for hosting the Winter Olympics to be a severe test. More than 2,000 athletes will travel to China for the Games, which begins on 4 February, and a large proportion of the 25,000 people accompanying them will also come from abroad. Thanks for joining us. The fossilized remains of an ichthyosaur have been found in England's Midlands, the largest and most complete of its kind discovered in the UK, according to a news release issued by Anglian Water.
Ichthyosaurs were large marine reptiles, similar in shape to dolphins, which grew up to 25 meters in length. The 10-meter-long fossil was first uncovered in February 2021 in Rutland Water and is thought to be 180 million years old. A conservationist at Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust, Joe Davis, found the ichthyosaur during a routine draining of a lagoon island for re-landscaping. Joe said that the find had been absolutely fascinating and a real career highlight. He added that it was great to learn so much from the discovery and to think that this amazing creature was once swimming in the seas above us. Known as sea dragons due to their large eyes and teeth, ichthyosaurs went extinct around 90 million years ago.
Magawa, the landmine detecting hero cat, has died, age 8, the NGO that trained him said in a news release on Tuesday. Magawa was one of the most important staff members from Apopo, the organization working to clear Cambodian from landmines and explosive remnants of war that are still spread across the country.
The news release stated that Magawa was in good health and spent most of last week playing with his usual enthusiasm, but towards the weekend he started to slow down, napping more and showing less interest in food in his last days. The statement added, "All of us at Apopo are feeling the loss of Magawa, and we are grateful for the incredible work he's done." Magawa was an African giant pouch rat renowned for finding 71 landmines and 38 items of unexploded ordnances during his career. The charity, Apopo, trains animals to detect landmines as well as tuberculosis. During his working life, Magawa's job title was Hero Rat, and he was awarded a gold medal by the UK-based veterinary charity PDSA in 2020 before retiring in June 2021. Magawa was born and trained in Tanzania before his move to Cambodia in 2016, Apopo said. According to the PDSA, Cambodia has more than 40,000 mine amputees and one of the highest number of mine amputees per capita in the world.
Tokyo's Ueno Zoological Garden held the first public viewing on Wednesday of twin giant panda cubs Lei Lei and Xiao Xiao, who were born in June last year.
Over 500 lucky winners of a lottery walked into the panda enclosure on Wednesday morning to get their first look at Japan's popular twin pandas. Their mother, Shinshin, arrived in Japan from China about a decade ago, and they are the first twin pandas born in the capital's Ueno Zoo. A 37-year-old visitor said, "They are really cute. I applied for the lottery at the end of last year, so I was really looking forward to it. I was wondering whether this event would be held because the Omicron variant is spreading, but it was really nice that we got to see them." The panda public viewing event will span over 3 days, while the zoo itself has been temporarily closed since January 11th due to the resurgence of new COVID-19 cases in Tokyo. Only the limited number of lottery winners will have 1 minute each to view the mammals. It is not clear when the cubs will be on display for the public in the near future. According to the zoo, each of the twins weighed about 100 grams when they were born, but they have grown steadily since, with Xiao Xiao weighing 14.6 kilograms and Lei Lei coming in at 14.4 kilograms as of January 11th.
Thanks for watching the weekly roundup on the EAC News channel. For more breaking news and updates, check our website eacnews.asia. You can also search for EAC News on Telegram or in your favorite app store. More from the EAC News team on Monday at 8. I'll see you then.